What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sound Doctrine, the channel centered around excellence in the audiovisual community. Today, we're talking about equalizing. Okay, so this is just the quick and dirty 5-minute intro to EQ, but just so you know, I will be doing an in-depth tutorial on how to sound check coming up here in the future when I'll go over this for the live sound application. For today, what we're going to do is take it into the studio and go in through kind of the nitty-gritty basics. Before we even talk about what an EQ is, we have to talk about what sound is. Well, sound is the change in air pressure and how we as humans perceive that. So when we talk, we're actually creating vibrations that move through the air as sound waves. We measure how fast those sound waves move in a thing called hertz, which you can also call frequencies, as in how frequently does the pattern of vibration repeat. We can then classify these into three sorts of categories: low frequencies, mid frequencies, and high frequencies. High frequencies are faster vibrations, and they feel like a higher pitch to us. We perceive the change in pressure overall as volume. So what we call volume is how much change is there between resting or ambient noise level and then this new pressure we've added by talking. We change that using faders. So you can see some examples here in FL Studio. I've got my faders, and that changes the volume of my overall sound. An equalizer goes a little bit deeper than that and lets us change the volume, how much has changed, of individual frequencies. So we could take just the high frequencies where our clarity, that tss, that cut is, and we could make those louder. Or we could take just the low frequencies, that kind of boomy, boxy, you feel it more than you hear it, and we can make that louder without making anything else louder. That's what an equalizer does. Why would we use it? Why would we ever want to make those changes? Well, an equalizer has two roles. The first thing it does is it makes it as if there was never a microphone involved in recording. Microphones have a signature, like a footprint that they add to anything that you record. The microphone isn't a perfect representation of the human ear, and so what it captures doesn't sound quite the same as it would sound if you were there just listening with your ears and there was no sound system involved. Using an EQ, we can sort of undo this signature and make it sound much more true to the way it sounded in the room at the time of recording. The second purpose of an equalizer is to blend one sound with all the other sounds. When you hear people talk about sound mixing, this is literally what they mean. Imagine that your finished product, whether if you're in live sound, this is what comes out of the mains, or if you're in recording, this is your stereo mix down. That product is like a puzzle, right? It's this big picture with all the colors in it, but each sound you get is an individual piece of that puzzle, and they don't come in perfectly. You need to sand off some of the rough edges. And so we do that using an equalizer. We cut out frequencies we don't need so that sounds that do need those frequencies can come through. Otherwise, you get mud. Imagine if you had a bass guitar, a bass drum, and someone playing just the low end of a piano all at the same time. You would get total mud. You wouldn't be able to tell what was being played. But if I cut those low frequencies out of the piano entirely and let them just play up high, and then if I cut some of the low frequencies for my bass and some of the low frequencies for my kick drum, I've now created a space for each instrument in the puzzle, and so each instrument gets to shine through. So let's look at an example of how this works practically. I've got a song here by my friend Zach. I'm not going to do the whole thing because, to be completely honest, I didn't get in touch with him before I made this video. But less than 10 seconds is always fair use, you copyright Nazis. So we are going to do less than 10 seconds of a song called You Have Me by my friend Zach Swanner. All we had on hand at the time was an SM57. So I'm going to turn off all my effects. On my screen here, what you're seeing is just my mixer where I control all the volumes. And then on the top right, I've got the EQ I apply to my vocals. And on my top left, I've got the EQ that I apply to my guitar. And right now I'm going to turn both of those off. And you're just going to hear what it sounds like without any modifications. Here's what it sounds like. Never seen an end. You have me. Great, okay, so not bad for, a SoundCloud demo, not bad for a personal recording. There's nothing inherently wrong with this sound, but it could be better, and we should always push for better. The first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna look at just my vocals. So I'm gonna turn off the guitar, And we're going to listen to Zach's vocals. Now, when I turn this on, the more astute of you might notice that there's also a compressor on this channel. The only purpose of that compressor is to even out his vocal levels. So when he takes a breath or sings really quietly, it doesn't change that drastically from when he's loud. I'll do a tutorial on compressors later. It's not that big a deal. Just know that it's not changing the tone of his sound. The EQ is the only thing that will do that. So here's his voice without any equalization.
You'll never see an end.
Resetting Zach to 0. Great. Let's turn it on and start to see what kind of changes we can make.
You'll never see an end. You have me.
The first thing I'm noticing is that there's not a lot of bass in his voice. Now in the room, I know, because I was there, that Zach's voice is a very full, rich tone. But you can tell without knowing that this sounds kind of tinny. It sounds like it's in a little box. You know, it's coming through a phone. And we can undo that using the equalizer. So the low frequencies are that fullness, that richness. So I'm going to come down to about 100, 150 hertz, 140 is what I've got right now. And I'm going to bump that up a little bit. So let's turn that up. And I'll just go with like a little subtle change, kind of like this. And now let's hear how that sounds.
You'll never see an end.
That feels a little better. Here's without.
You'll never
And with.
see an end.
Without.
You'll never
With.
see an end.
I'm going to also bump around 290 hertz, 300, somewhere in that space. That's just a few more of those lows.
You'll never see an end.
I think I may have started a little too low here.
You'll never
So here's with it, here's
see
without.
an end.
Now you can really feel how that's adding the richness back into his voice. That's a great start towards getting rid of the microphone. There's another thing I'm noticing in here, and it happens when he uses his sibilant sounds, which is to say, anytime you make an S or a T, that kind of sound. Here's how it sounds right now.
See an end.
Do you hear how harsh that is? How abrasive?
You'll never see an end.
Great, so that's not terrific. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to around 10 kilohertz, or 10,000 hertz for those of you in America who don't know kilos. And I'm going to start there with just a little bit of a cut.
You'll never see an end.
So do you notice how the sound didn't change very much? Sometimes you don't know what frequency you're looking for, and it can be really hard to EQ for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the bandwidth of my EQ band here. This is called Q on a lot of live mixing consoles. And then I'm going to turn it up a ton. Okay, so I've got this really, really narrow EQ band, and I've got it turned up very high. Now I'm going to play the sound, and I'm going to sweep across it until the sound I'm listening for gets much worse. That's how I'll know where my problem frequencies are. So let's listen for those S's to get way worse.
You'll never see an end.
Okay, they don't sound much different there.
You'll never see an end.
Oh, we're getting closer.
You'll never see an end.
There it is. I can feel it right there. Let's go a little further.
You'll never see an end.
So I'm going to turn that frequency that we just found. It was about 9 kilohertz, 9.5. I'm going to turn that down now in the other direction. I'm going to keep my sharp cut, maybe just a little bit wider, and turn that down. And let's see how that changes the sound.
You'll never see an end.
Okay, so the S's are not abrasive, but we went too far. So I'm going to slack that back a little bit.
You'll never see an end.
And that feels a little better to me. I might move another one over
You'll
there and get some of the lower parts of that S.
End.
It's very common for people's sibilants to live in two spots. And they're
You
usually
have
separated
me.
by a harmonic, which is in-depth science. We don't need to talk
You'll
about it. But anyway,
never
usually you have to cut in
see
two
an
spots, especially in
end.
studio world, to get those sibilants where you want them.
You have me.
Great, so this sounds a little bit more like Zach's natural voice. But when I cut those high frequencies, the boost I added to my lows feels like too much. When I cut my highs, it sounds a little bit like I boosted my lows. And so now my boost on the low frequencies needs to come down a little bit so that it's not quite as overwhelming.
You'll never see an end.
Right around there feels good to me. So that's the first property. Make it sound like he didn't have a microphone. Now let's see how he blends with the guitar.
You'll never see an end. You have me.
He blends pretty well, and anytime there's only one other instrument, people often will blend on their own. The best EQ is no EQ, and it's possible that we could leave this like this. However, there's one thing I noticed, and it's when he hums at the end of his sort of chorus tag there. You'll hear him go, mm-hmm, and we lose that beneath the guitar. Check it out.
You'll never see an end.
I'm going to look for probably somewhere in my lower mids, and I'm going to put a cut there to see if I can let that phrase kind of breathe out.
You'll never see an end.
So here's without it.
You'll never see an end.
And here's with it.
You'll never see an end.
Do you feel how much more space there is? Now we've lost all of the fullness of the guitar, so I'm going to go around that space where I just made room for Zach's voice, and I'm going to just put really small boosts there to put some of that fullness back in the guitar without being in the space that I just gave Zach's voice.
You'll never see an end.
Here's without. Here's with. We've got that fullness back.
You have me. You'll never.
This is pretty good.
See
We could
an
leave this like
end.
this, but again, I'm always pushing for that next step. And right now I've got one more thing I can think of, which is the slide on the guitar string. You hear that? When he does that, we get this really sort of high-pitched, and I don't like it. I have this problem a lot with guitars. Here it comes. Right
You
here.
have me.
Those sounds kind of like a bird chirping. Well, that's in the same space as a sibilant, so I'm going to start up where my sibilants were. And I'm going to boost this and see if I can find where it gets bad.
See an end. You have me. You'll never see an end.
We're close.
You have me. You'll never see an
It
end.
might be down here.
You have me.
Oh yeah, there they are.
You'll never see an end.
Listen how the sound changes.
You have me.
Feel how much less abrasive they are?
Never
But
see an
as a result
end.
of that, we've lost some of that clarity. So I'm going to put the higher frequencies back in,
You have me.
and then I'm going to boost around my cut
Never
over here too.
see an end.
So here's before,
You'll never see an end.
and here's after. And now we've got our sounds blending together.
You have
So hopefully this helped you a little bit. I know this is just a basic intro to EQ, but in the future I'll do a whole how to sound check video. It'll be very in-depth and helpful, and everything will be on fire, and we'll be on fire, but we'll be on fire together, so it'll be great. If you want to be notified when my next videos come out, just click on that red subscribe button, and until next time, don't forget to watch for coyotes.